Hello, this is my chat room I made. It took around a few days to make from the ground up. I used multiple programming languages, including PHP, JavaScript, Python, and some others like CSS and HTML. How the chat room works is that there are two servers and the client with the chat room JavaScript code, which runs on the client's computer, demonstrated here. When the client first connects, they will be asked for a name. The client puts in a name, and the name will be stored in a HTTP cookie, which is essentially data that persists in multiple sessions. So if the client disconnects and then reconnects, their name will still be there. Then every second, the JavaScript code automatically sends a GET request to the web server for new chats. The web server takes that request and then transforms it into a request that the chat server can understand, and then sends that to the chat server, which then sends the chats to the web server, which then turns the chats into an XML file, which then gets sent back to the client. When the client submits a chat, the JavaScript code takes the client's message and then sends a post request containing the client's name from the cookie and message. The web server takes the request and then transforms it into another request that the chat server can understand and then sends it to the chat server. If everything goes well, the chat server sends a response saying everything worked out well. Here's the JavaScript code that handles sending chats, receiving chats, and of course the client's name. The use strict activates strict mode, which basically makes it so you have to write better and less sloppy code. The getName function attempts to get the client's name from the cookie. It returns the name, but if it fails, it returns null, basically meaning nothing. The initName function is called when the user enters the website for the first time or changes their name. It gets the name via the getName function mentioned earlier. If it gets null, it prompts the user for their name and then stores it in an HTTP cookie, and then displays their name. The getNickColor function generates a color for a person's name via a lot of math I won't get into, as it would take a while to explain. For example, the name Mason will be a lime color, the name Alice will be a red color, and etc. And now here are the actual functions that have to do with the chat. The chat MSG function displays a message onto the page. Simple than that, really. The post chat function sends a chat message to the web server. If the message is blank, a chatbot scolds the user that the message cannot be blank. The function sends the message via a technique called AJAX, asynchronous JavaScript and XML. The getChat function gets messages via AJAX yet again, and then uses the chat MSG function to display it to the user. When the JavaScript code is loaded, it runs this piece of code at the very bottom. All it does is initialize the name, set the latest ID variable to -1, which is used for making sure what the latest chat message is, and then it runs the getChat function, and then when it's done, it displays a welcoming chat message to the user, and then after that it waits for any new chats every second via this line of code. Now for the web server's Chatroom API, which is programmed in PHP. API stands for Application Programming Interface. It's a really simple API that interfaces with the Chatroom server. You might be asking, why can't the client just directly connect to the Chatroom server instead of having some middleman API? Well, good question. The client shouldn't directly connect to the Chatroom server, because if they do, they can execute commands that can cause issues on the server, that can crash the server, or worst case scenario, even gain control of the server and make the server to do stuff it shouldn't do. Anyways, the API just sends requests to the Chatroom server depending on what the client sent to the API. If it's a GET request, then it gets all the chats from the Chatroom server, no questions asked. If it's a POST request, it gets the name and message fields from the request and then sends a request to the server to send the message. The Chatroom server is written in Python. I can't really explain it here as it's in multiple files and it will probably take a while to explain. That's all I have to show today. The source code is on GitHub and easy to set up as it uses Docker and Docker Compose, so you could easily set it up and run it on your computer. Have a nice day.